Welcome back to the Innovative Agency, everybody. Sharon Torek here. So good to be with you again. And I'm looking forward to an opportunity to talk to all of you cobblers kids today about something that you need to know about to better serve your clients. You need to stay current with, but also how well are you doing in your own agency with SEO, SEM? How are you playing the game for your agency so you can put your best foot forward in the world and attract those right clients that make sense for you to your door? And so I am really excited to welcome Michael Fleischner, who is the founder of an SEO agency. Michael, you're founder of Big Fin SEO. I'm so glad to have you with us today.
Thanks, Sharon. So glad to be here.
Yeah. Um, we were chatting just a few brief moments ago about cobbler's kid syndrome and
hmm
how, ironically, agencies are frequently in the position of advising their clients about SEO strategy, SEM strategy. But what's your experience, collaborating with other agencies, with the frequency with which they take a look at their own SEO, their own SEM, to make sure that they're doing what they can do to get connected with the right people to their door?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag, Sharon. I work with some agencies that take it very seriously. They focus on it. They stay on top of the current Google trends. They're doing everything they need to do. And then I see the exact opposite. I see a lot of agencies who are selling SEO. Now, whether they're delivering it via white label or, have people on staff
Right.
who are really nowhere on organic or even paid search. And I think some of us who have had agencies for a while, we've probably been burned. I know I have, where we pitch a service to a particular prospect, and then they Google us or they, run a GT metrics report on the website, and we come back with these negative results, or we don't show up in search results. And as a result, they say, well, how can I trust that you'll deliver on what it is that you're promising when you can't even do it for your own agency? And again, this is like the shoemaker's children who have no shoes. It's because oftentimes we are focused on delivering value for clients, or maybe we're focused in one area and not all areas. But at the end of the day, Google is who they say you are, meaning if someone goes out to Google and searches and they don't find you, or maybe they find you, but you only have one or two reviews, they're going to ask questions, and there will be some doubt as to whether or not you can follow through on what it is you're promising.
So, where do agencies who are looking to up their game here because they know they're not looking at this often enough, or they know they're not
hmm
refreshing with the right amount of frequency? And there's all sorts of different ways you can, I don't want to say game this, but there's you can attack it from lots of different angles, right? Organic,
hmm
paid. What do you tell agencies they have to think about doing first for
hmm
themselves? Or what are the questions they should be asking first? Because we've all got limited bandwidth.
hmm
They're looking to get that client work out the door and get paid for it. So where should they focus for impact first?
I think it starts with a question, which is SEO important to me? And I don't say that lightheartedly. I mean it in the sense that not all agencies need SEO. There's some very specialized niche agencies that show up in search results for one or two terms, and that's all they need. Or perhaps they're a white label agency and their focus is based on few strategic agency partnerships, and they just don't need to put a lot of time or effort into SEO. So I
Mm.
think part of it is really just being honest with yourself and saying, is this important to me, to my agency, to how I show up online? Now, that being said, I do feel that there is a basic level of optimization that everyone should be focused on, specifically when it comes to Google. So I think there are a few things that agencies should be doing and companies should be doing when it comes to organic search. The first is to schedule it. And again, this is all about getting caught up in our day-to-day work and not really having the discipline or focus. But once a month, at the end of the month, put a note on your calendar to spend half an hour on SEO. And that could mean different things to different people. For me, I like to automate it as much as possible. So whether you subscribe to Moz or SEMrush, or I'm sure there's some free SEO tools out there you could find or use, schedule a monthly crawl just so you can see what's going on with your website if there are areas to improve. So I think that's the first thing, is get it on a schedule.
Mhm.
The second thing for me, and what we're focused on with a lot of our both partners, our agency partners, and our clients, is around Google Business. So
Mhm.
what used to be the Google profile is Google My Business. It has been for some time. Google continues to put investment behind that, and they put a priority around their own listings over someone else's. So spending the time, again, schedule it every month, go through that listing, make sure the hours are up to date, the products and services that you have listed haven't changed, make sure you're uploading new photos, look at the data. They have, information you can use to really better understand who your audience is. So all of those things are important from both a national and local perspective. And if you boil it down to simply running a technical crawl every month on your own website and focusing on Google Business, you'll be ahead of 80, 90%, certainly of the agencies that I've interacted with. Although I have a number of partners who do it extremely well, I have others who are still really at the beginning thinking about, how do I show up online?
Right. I think that's a great starting point and a very digestible step. I always, folks who listen to the podcast on any regular basis know I love takeaways that can be scaled up or down depending upon your size, your resources, the amount of time you have to spend. So, and those are good first steps. I love that.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk a little bit about thought leadership and how it impacts SEO. And again, to your point, Michael, how much time, agency leaders need to worry about or should be devoting their team's time to this. Um, what about thought leadership? It's a very
Mhm.
hyped term.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of anyone who uses the term to refer to themselves. I think if you have to call yourself a thought leader, you're probably not a thought leader.
That's fair.
That's just my editorial.
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
Michael's position necessarily, that's just Sharon's definition.
Hmm.
Um, but let's say you mentioned niche, agencies before.
Hmm.
Let's start there for a second. How much does thought leadership from your perspective as an SEO expert layer into the mix?
Hmm.
How do you know when it's important for you as an agency, and
Sure.
then, or to recommend to your clients as a strategy to get them noticed and be worthy of an investment?
Hmm. Yeah, I think thought leadership takes so many different forms
Mhm.
today that it all depends on what lens you're looking through.
Mhm.
Personally, I still feel that thought leadership is important, but it is important based on the niche that you're in. And today, trying to be all things to all people is just, a drop of water in the ocean. It's really not going to work to your advantage.
Mhm.
But there are many agencies who have it figured out. And when I say figured out, unless you're, one of the big five, or, Ogilvy and Mather, the reality is that unless you've focused on a niche, you probably don't have a lot of traction, or, a specific service, right? Like SEO, and that's really primarily what you do. So in those areas, I think it is important to share what you know, because you, the collective agency, really is in this unique position to provide insights and experience based on real world experience, meaning the clients they're working with on a day-to-day basis. And
Mhm.
hopefully, as an agency, all agencies, we try a lot of different things. We don't always have it figured out, but we have the discipline to test, to analyze, to try again. And because of that learning, I think we're in a really unique position to share what we know. Now, how that gets shared is really going to depend on the individual and the agency. Maybe it's getting a speaking engagement at a conference, a regional conference, and being able to stand up in front of everyone and do a case study or share some findings of a recent project. For others, it may be blogging on an everyday basis. Others may want to go on to TikTok. I've got a good friend, and she's actually an influencer on TikTok who just focuses. She used to run a career office for a university.
Mhm.
And since then, she's developed her own assessment and written a book and done all of these things. But all she does is help people nail the interview. And
Okay.
that's what she does, right? And she is sharing her experience because she's worked with, if not thousands, probably tens of thousands of individuals, which put her in a very unique position to comment and to talk about that. So if you are an agency and you're thinking about thought leadership just in terms of strategy, I think it really all starts with, what am I uniquely positioned to talk about? And most importantly, how do I want to talk about it? Do I want to sit here and blog about it? Do I want to post on social? Do I want to get a speaking engagement? Do I want to maybe create an annual survey that I put out that I can speak to? So there are a lot of different ways to engage in thought leadership, but I think it needs to be personalized to the individual and to the individual agency to really make it substantial in terms of what is being shared and the impact of the information that's being shared as well.
And let's say that the best strategies for your agency end up sort of being those offline opportunities, like those in-person speaking engagements or those guest appearances on people's podcasts,
Mhm.
etc. How do you turn that expression of expertise into SEO success? What
Mm,
should the agencies be thinking about? Because, if you yell into a forest and nobody's there to hear it,
yeah.
did you really yell? So,
Mhm.
how would you counsel an agency to convert some of that
Mhm.
equity,
Yeah.
associated with their expertise into an SEO strategy that, could get people to their doors that way?
Mhm. The word that comes to mind is amplification, which
Mhm.
is figuring out how to take one piece of content, which can, again, be substantial in the sense that it's 30 minutes or an hour long, and actually break that up into many pieces of content. And then how can we distribute that content? Now, I will say from an SEO perspective, if I look at it wearing the SEO hat, the reality is you only need a couple of good quality links as opposed to quantity. So, if you're in social media, you may want to take, a piece of content and break it into 30 days of posts or reels or whatever the case might, tweets. But, from an SEO perspective and being kind of selfish about it, I'm all about the 20/80, right? What is the 20% that I can focus on that'll generate 80% of the result?
Mhm.
And oftentimes that comes down to having some quality links from authoritative websites. So what I could do is, for example, Sharon, when the podcast is over, I could go out to PR Web, do a press release that says that, I was featured on this podcast and put my agency name in there and send that PR Web release out across the internet. The only downside to that is it may get distributed to thousands of sites, probably hundreds or maybe even dozens. They've been cutting back significantly,
Yeah.
but the most value that I could get is actually from your posting of the podcast on your own website,
Mhm.
because your website has authority. And if you use the correct anchor text, which is really what the link says,
Mhm.
if you use that and you point back to my website, that's where I'm going to get the most value. So that really, to me, is the 20/80. It's having some strategic partners, friends, JV partners, collaborators, whatever you want to call them, who you can leverage with your own content. Another example of this is blogging. I work with a lot of agencies who say, well, I don't understand. We put a new blog post up every week and we share it on our social media. Why aren't we showing up in search results? And the answer is because you don't have an audience. You only have, 250 people who follow you on LinkedIn, and you have, a website with a domain authority of 18 out of 100. So what do you do about that? Well, maybe you collaborate with, I'm based here in New Jersey, and maybe there's the New Jersey Ad Council or the New Jersey American Marketing Association or these other organizations who might have more authority or more clout who are willing to share that with their audience and post it on their websites.
Hmm.
And if you can be a little more strategic about it, you can get more value again without having to chase down 30 days of social media posts and all of this activity that just may not generate the result that you're looking for. I had a boss once who said, don't confuse activity with results. And
Yeah.
this is a prime example of that. So it really is, to me, quality over quantity.
Well, and it's also, this is also a great example of how um no tactic works in a vacuum when you're just when you're talking about marketing in general. I mean, what you're describing is sort of a web of strategies that build on one another. And SEO is one of them. You need the
Mhm.
others. You need the connections that lead to the invitation, that leads to the podcast appearance, et cetera, et cetera. And they all kind of work together. And so thinking about it as a standalone strategy, based on how you're describing the things to think about, doesn't seem to work. It seems like it's only effective as part of a multi-layered overall strategy rather than looking at it in a vacuum.
I would agree. And I would also take that one step further and say that even within SEO, it becomes a multifaceted strategy. So the example I like to give, or the advice I like to give with agencies that we work with is control your assets. And what I mean by that is, if you go out today and you Google yourself or your agency, you're going to see a bunch of results. Some of those you can control directly, whether it's a listing, whether it's your LinkedIn profile or page
Mhm.
or Crunchbase or some site that has your agency listed. Maybe you've won a Clutch Award or something. Oftentimes you can manage your own listing on those sites. So proactively, now that we have it on everyone's calendar to do once a month,
Right.
they can go through, they can Google themselves and they can see where they can update, change, or even expand information that appears online about themselves. And that really takes you into kind of the reputation management piece of SEO. It's still SEO,
Mhm.
but again, as you were saying, like it's multifaceted and it's not like days of old where all we had to do was buy a bunch of links, point them to our website, and we had the whole first page of results. It just doesn't work that way anymore.
Right. Well, that is an awesome segue into what I also want to talk with you about, which is the evolution of SEO. I'd love to know what you're seeing out there in terms of how the practice has evolved. Let's just start pandemic forward, right?
Hmm.
Because the way that we, I think, talked to customers as brands, the way that we get in touch with other businesses who may want to be our clients if we are a B2B company has seriously evolved and changed post pandemic. To my eyes, and I'm not the
Yeah.
expert here, you are, but I wondered if you could just share a little bit about your experience and how you're seeing SEO evolve in the last couple of years, and then I want to throw the two dangerous vowels in front of you, AI, and see how that is impacting the way you're advising clients right now about their SEO strategies.
Sure. Yeah. So the pandemic was really interesting for digital in general. I think, as you are aware, people kind of woke up to the idea that, oh, since people can't walk into our stores anymore, we have to reach them through the internet. And that really fueled, I believe, digital marketing pretty aggressively for us in a good way. It created broader awareness and dependence on showing up in search results, both paid and organic. And because of that, I think companies are taking it a little more seriously. At the same time, it really created a bit of a land rush in the sense that everyone was trying to grab every dollar that was out there around marketing spend, especially digital marketing spend. And although there were more dollars, there was also much more competition. So trying to cut through that has certainly been a challenge. And I think it goes back to the basics that we always focus on from a marketing perspective: know your audience, create a compelling offer, so on and so forth, in order to try to cut through that clutter. The good part of that is I think it really forced out a lot of these fly by night, hey, we'll get you on the first page of Google for $99 type places, which still existed before the pandemic. A lot of people kind of lose sight of that. But, SEO has had a hard decade because with all of the updates that Google has made, people or have made, Google, um, as they tighten the reins, a lot of people fall out of SEO and they say, well, you know what? It's not like it used to be. It's not as easy as it was. No, but it's still important and it's still doable. It's just how we get there has changed. So because of that, I feel like we're better off today than we were 3, 4 years ago in terms of the industry, in terms of being validated of our importance, and also focusing on the right things. In other words, doing SEO in a very transparent way that involves both technical SEO and keyword research and content development. Even link building today has taken on a different flavor. So all of those things to say that I think we're in a very good place with SEO, both as an industry, as a profession, as well as a tool in the arsenal to help companies and agencies thrive. Now, that being said, oh, do you have a question? So
No, no, go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah,
No,
no, because I was going to transition into your AI question.
yeah.
And, putting AI in front of SEO is really interesting because I think the fundamentals are still the same, especially when it comes to technical SEO.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I feel like the SEO industry is a bit of a laggard when it comes to artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is I see, even with ChatGPT, I see a lot of people creating tools that will allow you to interface with ChatGPT to do what we already do, things like
Right,
technical SEO,
right.
but it hasn't really advanced that to the extent of making our jobs significantly easier. The only place it has is with content development.
Mhm.
So, any SEO company that isn't leveraging AI to at least support content development clearly is not on board, right? I mean, this train has left the station. All of us should be using AI and experimenting with AI, but the fundamentals of SEO, they have not changed. And honestly, I don't know that AI is helping yet. I think it will over time, especially as it's able to analyze more and more websites, just like Google does in search results, but it's not there yet. It will be, I have no doubt, but it's probably a year or two away.
I think you're right about that. I mean, the speed with which it is getting smarter is just crazy. I mean, exponential increases in adaptation. But where it feels to me like we are now, and I would really love your point of view on this, is a lot of the copy that ends up being created using AI generation is starting to feel, and I hope this is a short-term hiccup, is starting to feel like the keyword loaded junk that we used to see back when that was the best strategy. That was the
Mhm.
hottest strategy to use to get, inbound attention on your
Sure.
content or your website. And I mean, we're seeing it not only in online content, but we're seeing it in the emails that get written
Hmm.
to us, to the point where I have to tell you, I sent some messaging out on LinkedIn, some human created messaging out on LinkedIn. And someone came back and said, send this back after a human writes it because this is obviously AI written, which it was not. But I mean, so I think we're just assuming
Hmm.
now that when we see something that maybe isn't as artfully written as it could be,
Yeah. Hmm.
or that isn't saying anything new or bringing anything, any unique perspective to the table, AI wrote that. A machine wrote that. It didn't
Yeah.
go through any human, guardrails. And so I'm really hoping that I love your perspective. If that's what you see, if
Mhm.
that's just something I'm a little paranoid about, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, well, I think it definitely requires that both sides of the equation get better. And what I mean by that, Sharon, is that it's not just the output, it's also the input that really needs to improve. And I
Right.
think even within our own agency, we as an agency have gotten much more proficient at writing meaningful prompts that generate a better outcome.
Mhm.
And that's learning on both ends. And that takes time. It just doesn't happen instantly. So I think you're going to see more of that over the next 12 to 18 months. At the same time, I think AI is continuing at a, breakneck pace to evolve and get better. And, if you can define writing content using natural language that's also SEO optimized, and to look out for things like keyword stuffing or being overly dependent on H1 tags or whatever the case might be, you can get there, but it does take some work and it does take some learning. So, hopefully we as an industry will take that to heart. And also, I'm looking for more innovative uh, software companies like, SEMrush in particular, and even Moz to some extent, because we really like Moz here at Big Fin, to integrate AI not just into the content piece, but into those other pieces that are critical in SEO, whether it's foundational SEO, like going out and making sure that your website has Google Analytics installed and Google Search Console set up and Google My Business is fully optimized, and starting there. And the keyword research is another one. Keyword research for over a decade, because I've been doing this close to 20 years. 20 years ago, it was difficult. Today, it's just as difficult. There are
Mhm.
more tools there, but at the end of the day, there's really not a best in class way to do keyword research. I'm hoping AI can help with that.
Mhm.
And I think it will. Again, it's going to take time, but it's going to take more people within the industry really focusing towards that goal and getting some sort of agreement around best practices. And we're much further along than we've ever been. I don't want it to sound like we're nowhere. We've actually come quite a long ways, but there is more to grow and quite honestly, more potential now that we're seeing what AI is truly capable of.
How do you feel like agencies need to be advising their clients differently about SEO now in terms of the where it fits into the mix
Mhm.
of strategies that they might recommend, or tactics, I should say, that they might recommend, or where it ranks on the scale of importance, right?
Sure.
What about everything that's happening out there just naturally with SEO over the last couple
Mhm.
of years and with the explosion of AI integrations? What do you think agencies need to know about advising their clients?
I think the advice needs to evolve just as the technology and obviously artificial intelligence has evolved. It used to be that SEO was its own strategy, just like pay-per-click was its own strategy, just
Mhm.
like outdoor advertising was its own strategy. Now everything is fully integrated. So SEO needs to be layered into everything that a company or a client is producing, whether it's a blog article, a new web page, or a video for a social media channel. And I think that's the evolution and that's the mindset that agencies need to have if they're going to do right by the client.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, more often than not, either agency clients or direct clients come to us because no one ever told them that SEO really needed to be integrated into what they were doing. So now they've launched that YouTube channel and they're saying none of our videos show up. Well, yeah, because you didn't really think about SEO from the start. So how can we, take a few steps back to move a few steps forward? So
Mhm.
integrating SEO into all of the work that a company is doing from a marketing perspective I think is essential. Now, that doesn't mean that everything needs to be quote unquote SEO'd, but you need to look through a lens of how you're going to show up in search results if you want that piece of content to rank. And it can rank anywhere. There are lots of search engines beyond Google, whether it's a large search engines like an SEO or DuckDuckGo, like Google or DuckDuckGo, but also something like YouTube or something like Instagram or something like voice search. These are all things that are impacted by a very intentional question, which is how do we want to show up?
Mm-hmm.
And if agencies are advising their clients to think in that way, I think they're going to see better results and more consistent results, which obviously flows back to the agency as providing that level of value.
I love that. I mean, I'm a very visual learner and thinker personally, and I mean,
Mhm.
when you said that, I was envisioning a flow chart that you fill out at the beginning of the conversation regarding strategy with the client, so that you're not missing any steps in the integration as you roll out, so that you don't have to waste resources retracing your steps.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's always easier to do it. One of the agencies that we work with, who I just adore, they create amazing websites. Even to this day, when there are a lot of website providers, I mean, they're one of the best. And we work with them during the build. They don't build it and then say, okay, now quote unquote SEO our website. They're starting early on saying, here's the company we're doing it for, here's the brand vision, here's what it's all going to look like, so that we can help them with the keyword research, identify, areas of content that we can really focus on to differentiate and show up in search results. And they get it, right? They understand that it's just so much easier and so much more affordable to do it before than after, when it really has to be all broken down and rebuilt in order to really show up in a good way in search results. So, it's better to do it earlier. That doesn't mean you can't do it later,
Mhm.
but there is some value to getting a jump on it and thinking ahead.
Right. So, and I'd love your perspective on this as well. One of the main reasons why, in my experience talking to lots of agency owners, why good relationships can go to, shall we say, less good between agency and client,
Mhm,
is the lack of discussion about agreed upon metrics,
mhm.
measurements, goals. Um, how do you feel like agencies should be talking with their clients at the outset about what a reasonable expectation is, um, or how should they frame the conversation regarding the appropriate measurements, the intervals for those measurements, and so that everybody's on the same page about what the desired result is, because we hear this all the time. You
Mhm,
brought me a ton of leads, they were all garbage, or you brought us a bunch of people and they weren't qualified appropriately. You name it. I mean, those are just
mhm, mhm,
top of mind examples, but what are the appropriate measurements to get your clients thinking about expecting,
mhm,
and maybe some intervals for thinking about when you should be talking to your client about performance,
mhm.
of SEO and other elements of the campaign?
Yeah, it's a great topic, Sharon. I really think it does come down to setting expectations
Mhm,
early and often. I think part of the difficulty that we have working either between agencies or with clients is that we don't have transparency where we need it,
mhm,
especially around SEO. And
mm,
oftentimes it's educational, meaning you're going to have your, I don't know, point of contact. Let's say they're a director of marketing and they understand it. They get it. They understand it takes time. We're going to have to work through some of the technical SEO before we can get to on-page SEO and then ultimately off-page SEO. And then the CEO says, wait, we've been working with the SEO company for 6 weeks. And when I type fill in the blank, we don't show up. Well, there's a disconnect there because that CEO was not part of the conversation where there was a whole dialogue focused on what keywords are important to you. Where are you currently? Here's
Mhm.
typically how long it takes to see an improvement in rankings, right? All of that kind of onboarding conversation, really everyone needs to be engaged in.
Mhm.
And this is another thing that needs to be communicated openly and oftenly, because when you communicate often, people hear you. When you mention it once, people may have heard you, but they don't really hear you.
Mhm.
And I think that's incredibly important. You know, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that people are human. They need to hear things more than once. And there needs to be a framework by which we operate. That's how all of us think.
Mhm.
And if you're not providing a monthly report that highlights these three things, or a weekly update, or whatever the case might be, I think without some sort of consistent communication, things go awry. I know with my agency, we're agile methodology, so we do everything on a 2-week sprint. So
Mhm.
everybody knows where everyone is, and it doesn't take any time beyond that 2-week sprint. And to me, that's just the right amount of time. You know, if I don't hear from somebody for a couple of weeks, that's okay. If it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, like now I'm concerned. What are you doing? Or what are you not doing?
Right.
Which is often the case.
Right.
So if you can set clear, definable goals, focus on those over a 2-week period, I think that's the magic key. At least for us, that's what we have found. I think our clients appreciate it. I think the agencies we partner with have come to expect it because it requires that discipline in order to get things done. I think something for me that I learned really probably in the last year is there are really only two dials you can control. One is discipline, the other is trust.
Mhm.
Because if there is no discipline, then that means you are trusting that person, that partner, that client to do what they need to do. So ideally, you should have both discipline and trust, but you can kind of waver back and forth between one or two, either one of those in order to maintain a relationship. But I do think that having those communications on a regular basis is really important to create that transparency and also create value for the client.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like every agency needs to have a mandatory how we work with you workshop
Mhm.
um at every kickoff meeting. I just and they should probably have them more than once if it's an ongoing relationship. But this is
Mhm.
how we work with you. This is how we're measuring that. Agencies love kickoff meetings. They're very exciting. The clients all
Mhm.
excited. But they don't usually and that's the point of the relationship at which everybody's the most jazzed up and receptive to, rules of the road, and so I think it's a missed opportunity, not just with SEO, but whatever
Mhm.
tactics you're using in the marketing campaign. Well, this has been a really interesting discussion of something that I can't think of another discipline within agency life that has gone through so many shape shifts. Maybe PPC, I don't know.
Mhm.
But just in terms of how we talk about it in the industry and
Mhm.
what we expect from it. And so thank you, Michael. I really appreciate you sharing some of your expertise in the area. And I know that one of the things that Big Fin does is white label for other agencies, the SEO component of the work. And so I'd love to hear how those agencies can get in touch with you and learn more about what it is that Big Fin does or how they get in touch with you personally.
Thanks, Sharon. That would be great. People can reach out to me directly. My email is mfleischner at bigfinseo.com. That's MFLEISCHNER at bigfinseo.com, or visit our website, bigfinseo.com, to learn more about our white label SEO solution. And what I can say too, just for a moment, about a lot of the partners that we have, and we work with a lot of different agencies, really of different size and focus. The one constant is I think many of them have realized that SEO is continually evolving and changing so quickly. So if it is a service that you've never sold but you want to sell, working with a partner is a great way to do that because they're bringing all of that expertise. And secondly, even if you have people in-house where you're offering SEO, you want to make sure that it doesn't remain stagnant because and in fact, Google March 5th just did an update, their last core update. With each update, it has an impact, and oftentimes it's hard to see unless you're looking at it across multiple websites to see how it's affecting all of these websites, either similarly or differently. So it's always good to kind of take a step back. And even if you're not bringing on a partner like Big Fin SEO, you're at least talking with, collaborating with, and learning from some of these SEO agencies that are in it day in and day out, because that's information you can share with your clients. So I encourage people to reach out, to follow us, obviously, on LinkedIn, visit the website, or reach out to me if they have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael, so much for sharing your expertise today. It was great to have the conversation with you.
Thanks so
And
much,
thanks.
Sharon.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation on the innovative agency. Until then, everybody stay well.